Hey guys, so I thought it would be interesting, maybe for you to get a little insight of this creature I did for last month, because when I look at it, then there are a few things and tips I can give you to make your creatures a little bit better as well. So yeah, I just think let's just go into it and learn a little bit. So I would just start with just the creature. So let me turn off the assets first. So the first thing I can recommend when you're doing a creature is looking at very soft but visible little details. So you see that my creature don't have really a lot of details on the skin. It's just because it is not the type of creature. For example, compared to a crocodile, a dinosaur, a lizard in general, they have a lot of details on their skin because they have these little scales all around the body. And this is what this creature don't have. It is like a cat or a dog. They just have normal skin without any scales on it. But we all know that skin has little pores, right? And you can't really see it here. Actually, when you look at it here, then it looks like the whole skin is just very smooth. But when I just zoom in, you see that I still have some little pore details on the whole skin. So for example, here you can see that here around the neck, on the chin as well. They're not really visible when you zoom out, but they are there, and they are visible when you do maybe some close-up shots. And these little details, even when you don't see them from far away, are so important because it makes the whole creature more alive. When you don't have these little soft skin details on the body, then it kind of looks a little bit like plastic or clayish. I mean, this is kind of clay, right? But we wanted to make it more alive. And skin has pores, just very smooth and light ones, but it has pores. So let's just keep that in mind, that when you have a creature who don't have any scales on the body, then you can do some pore texture on it, and you can actually use any kind of alphas for that. I just put an alpha here on it, use the standard brush, and then I lowered the intensity a little bit so it wouldn't be too obvious, and then I just went through the whole body, you know, like this, maybe with a smaller brush like this, and then went over the whole body. And this is what makes our creatures a little bit more alive when you remember these little skin pores. Another thing is sculpting some muscles. I really like sculpting muscles with the clay buildup brush because it has this default square alpha on it. And you can see it here. I think do I have it here? Yeah. So you can see it here on this arm muscle. There are some little lines here all over, but they're very, very smooth. What is good, because everything what is too strong would look unnatural, right? So I really like just using the clay buildup brush and then going over muscles like this. And when I smooth everything out, of course you should do that when you don't have any skin details on it. You have to do it before. But now when you're just smoothing it out, it is very, very light, but you see these little lines here, right? And this makes it so much more alive, and you have the feeling that there are some muscles under the skin, what is pretty nice. I have it here on this muscle, I have it here on this muscle a little bit, and here on this one, here you can see it a little bit, or here on the back leg. But something you have to keep in mind is that you don't sculpt all these little muscle details on every muscle, because when you have all these lines on every muscle, then it would look a little bit weird, right? Just when you have like here, and it is here as well, and here, then it looks kind of unfinished. So keep in mind that you just do these muscle lines on some parts of the body, but not the whole body, to just make it more realistic. So yeah, this is the thing of the muscles. Oh, one thing about when it comes to muscles, I'm definitely not the best in anatomy. I have to learn a lot more, but what I can tell you is that when you're sculpting muscles, let's keep this leg for example, when you're sculpting muscles, then every muscle should be connected and flow into each other. I will show you what I mean. So when I have here this muscle, right? And then I have another muscle, keep another color, which is flowing like this. So you see it is kind of connected and it flows into each other, right? This is flowing down and the other one is flowing up. And then we have, for example, another muscle which is connected here, and this is flowing into each other as well. So everything has kind of a flow, and they're not just randomly set here. For example, here's a muscle, and here, and here, and here, and here. When you do it like that, then they're not really connected. I mean, they're lay next to each other, but they don't really flow, you know, like for example like this and this. So when you just turn this leg a little bit, when you turn this leg here, you can see it here very, very good. When you have a muscle, this one is flowing here, and then you have another muscle which is flowing from up here to down here, you know, like in this direction. The other one was flowing in this direction or this, it depends. And then we have another muscle here which is flowing, you can see that here on the wrinkle, which is flowing here as well. And you can see that every muscle is flowing into each other, right? Everything is connected, kind of here, but they all have, even when they are bigger, they all have their right place next to each other. And everything looks way more realistic when you connect muscles like that, to just make them more flow and to connect them. For example, here the let me see, the muscle is not like this, right, to split the muscles up. No, it is flowing into each other. So actually the deeper curves are ending here and the rest is just connecting to each other, right? The same here. It is not that I sculpted it like this, so it would be just one piece of muscle. No, it is kind of connected here, right, with the other muscle. So keep that in mind when you're sculpting some muscles, that everything needs to flow into each other and needs to be connected. That's how muscles are working, because if not, then you actually couldn't move any of your arms and legs and, you know, these joints. So everything needs to be connected. Another thing when it comes to creatures and characters in general, asymmetrical is your friend. So if you are doing a creature, then you should definitely think about the asymmetrical parts of it. I don't have too many here actually. For example, what I could have do, for example, is taking the left horn and cut this just a half from the other side, right? That would be a good asymmetrical aspects. But where I have some asymmetrical things here are, for example, on the wrinkles. Wrinkles are always good when you have asymmetrical in it, because it makes it more natural when not every part looks the same like the other side. A good example, what I definitely could do better, is when you're going here on the tail, you definitely can see that I mirrored here the wrinkles from the tail, right? It is not really nice. So keep in mind that when you're doing parts which you can see at the same time, what is mostly the case for a tail or a back, or of course the front of the face, for example, then it would be better to focus here on more asymmetrical aspects. When you're working on the sides, then it's totally fine when you don't have asymmetrical things there, because you only can see one side at a time, right? You can't see both sides. So it is totally fine when you do more symmetrical things here on the sides. But the head, the back, and the tail, for example, this can be a little bit more asymmetrical. And for example, the assets, when a creature has some horns or something, then you can also make these, for example, cutting one of the horns so it's a little bit broken or something, or the other horn is a little bit smaller than the other one or thicker. This definitely makes more, brings more life to the whole shape as well. I did that a little bit here on the claws. When you look at this, so the claws on the back are totally symmetrical, but on the front claws they are a little bit different. You can see that this claw is going up, this one is going to the side, so they are a little bit different here. But yeah, this is definitely not the most the best example here, this creature, but every asymmetrical thing is good. So what do we have next? So I just turn on the assets here, and one thing I highly recommend when you're doing assets, first rule, make it asymmetrical. I mean, this is the same rule then for characters and creatures, but it is so important to have asymmetrical things in assets, because it makes it all more realistic. So for example, I have here the I actually don't know really what this is. This is some kind of a seed thing, I guess. I don't know. So when you look at this, you see that all the planks are not the same shape, right? They are smaller, or they are cut differently, right? It makes it so much better when you see it in the whole, when it's not symmetrical. It looks so much more alive. Even when you're looking here, this part is a little bit longer than the other part, and so on. So everything what you're doing, make it asymmetrical. I can just repeat myself in this video too much. Another thing, which rule I really like using in all of my projects, is the even and odd rule. The even and odd rule is pretty easy to use, but it makes so much more sense when I show it to you. So even and odd numbers, especially on objects, are so useful. When you're looking here on this creature, then you see that there are a ton of even and odd numbers. It is not that I have 2 pairs of everything on the creature, like 2 of the backs, 2 of the bottles, 2 of this and that. I always try to make a variety from even, like for example, let me show it here, from an even number 1, 2, and then next to it I have an odd number 1, 2, 3, right? And then I have, for example, delete that, then I go here on this one, and you see that I have 3 of these pots. I don't know if that's a pot, but 1, 2, and 3, this is an odd number, and then I have 1 and 2 is an even number of these. What is the name of these things? I totally forgot. And then, for example, we're just moving here. I have an even number here on the holders, 1 and 2, and here on the top it's an odd number again, 1. And then going around here on the legs, for example, I have 1 odd number here, right, this little armor, and on the other side I have an even number from the bandage, 1, 2, right? And then on top, when here is an even number, on top of it, it's an odd number again, 1, 2, 3 bags. So everything is kind of different from each other. So I really try, when I put some assets on a creature, character, whatever, I really try to make this rule a standard rule, because it looks so much better to have even and odd numbers next to each other. Like I said, for example, here it's an even number, here's an odd, here is an even, on top is an odd, next to it is an even, here on top is an odd. Here on the other side, this is an even number, this is an odd number. For the rope as well, here we have 1, 2 of the shapes, right? 1, 2 of the curves. And on the other side, it's 1, 2, and 3 ropes. So everything looks definitely better when you're keeping this rule in mind. I think this is something really helpful when you are working more with assets. And the last thing I want to talk about is working smart. So it depends on what you really want with your character or creature. Do you really need it for animation, for a full game, where some of the parts can fall off? Or if you're just doing a little figure to print that out, or using that for a board game. For example, when you're doing figures for board games, for printings, then you really can work less than you need to. For example, you can see here, I'll just turn this off. You can see here that I have this blanket, and on this blanket there are some fur, right? And you can see this fur on some parts, but not on all. So for example, here on this part, there is a huge blanket over it, right? So you actually don't really need to sculpt anything here on this part, because nobody ever will see this. And that's why I just cut it off. I just don't need it. First, it is better for your poly count. You have less poly count in the whole file, and it is just less work to do. So working smart is definitely something you have to keep in mind. The same with here, for example, the belt. You can see here in this part, the whole blanket is over the belt, right? So you don't really see this part, and that's why it looks so ugly and messy here in this part. But nobody will see it, so I don't really need to care for that, right? I only need to care here on this part, even not really on this part, because you can see that here there is this little clip over it, so I don't really need to care for that as well. But yeah, so like I said, some things to keep in mind to make the whole character, creature, asset thing more believable, more realistic, and just a little bit better is when you look at the asymmetrical aspects of the whole thing. It doesn't matter if it's a creature or the asset. Then think about the even and odd rule, because it really makes a difference when you take care of that. And then think about the little textures I talked in the beginning from the creature, so that you have still some texture on the whole body, even when you don't really see it. So yeah, I think these tips could help you. So I just wanted to share it with you. And I'm really happy to see some of the tips when you're doing your project. So have a good day, and we'll see us in the next video.